Welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast. I am Helen Veru. This podcast is dedicated to help anyone connected to preteens and teens to give them tools, empower and inspire teachers, high school senior leaders, and parents to build the future leaders of tomorrow. We discuss about controversial and relevant topics related to the world of education, the main problems you are facing, and solutions to help you navigate your journey. We want to make a positive change in education by bringing on experts that will give you a different perspective on how you can solve the hardship you are facing today. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Empowering the Next Generation with me, Coach Helen. I'm so glad that you're here with us. This is a new episode where we have Viv Grant. She already came to the podcast a few months ago, and now she's going to share her insight on her new book. I want to introduce to you who is Viv Grant. So, Viv Grant is known for her deep insight into leadership, vulnerability, and resilience. She is also the director of integrity coaching, a London's leading provider of coaching services for head teachers and senior school leaders, and she has over 30 years career in education. Viv has held a range of influential roles in the world of education as she as well became one of the youngest head teacher in the country at the age of 31 while she was pregnant with her first child. She was appointed to turn around a failing primary school as a challenge, and she actually wanted to shape her understanding on leadership resilience in profound ways. So we have with us Viv Grant. Can you come on stage, please? So everybody can see you for the second time. You have so much wisdom to offer. So thank you for being with us. We're excited because in this podcast, we want to ignite, we want to help school leaders create meaningful conversation, and also we want to help them to empower their school community. So if you're listening to us, make sure that you actually subscribe to our YouTube channel and you share the message with everybody. So Viv, let's talk about your new book because you already have one. Yes, amazing. You already have one book you actually wrote when you came on the first on the podcast the first time. You talked about your first book called Staying Ahead. Talk about your the stress of management secrets for school leaders, and now you are going even deeper. You are talking about growth, inner growth, and I love that. So your new book, you're gonna introduce your new book to everybody. Why this title? Okay, and share with the audience. So why this title? And just share like why you started. Oh, you muted. Oh yeah, you know. Awesome.
Okay, so this book is one that I never, ever imagined I was going to write. I knew there was another book in me, but I thought it was going to be on my PhD, which I'm still researching. But 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with uterine serous carcinoma, which is a rare and aggressive cancer that is dominant in women of color. One of the most, how can I say, yeah, just to be honest, one of the most scary, frightening experiences in my whole life. You hear that 1 in 2 of us are going to have our lives impacted by cancer, but you never imagine it's going to be you. So, but it was me. And the whole experience just took me to places inside myself that I'd never, ever been before. I see myself as being quite resilient. I see myself as being someone, as we all have been through a number of trials in life, but this was something different. And the book came about because a week before surgery, so I had to have a hysterectomy. I thought, oh, maybe I'll do art therapy as recovery at the hospital where I was being treated. But when I inquired, they said they hadn't had an art therapist for over 18 months. And so I couldn't have that therapy. So I came home feeling a little more than a little down, to be honest, because I could feel the anxiety rising about the operation. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I think at the time I was very much just one day at a time. And my daughter at the time was at home. She must have been 19 with her best friend who's an art student. And I explained to them what had happened. And jokingly, her best friend said, "Oh, Viv, I'll be your art therapist." And I didn't really think anything of it. So I had the operation. A week later, her best friend Isha came round. They put fairy lights in the front room, plants and everything. Said, "Viv, you're going to paint." And she bought acrylics, she bought little canvases. And I just said to the two of them, "But I don't know what to paint. I was in pain. If you've anyone who's had a major abdominal operation, you know you can barely walk. I'm still feeling very anxious, didn't know what the future would hold." But they said, "Just paint." And I started to paint, Helen. Helen, what you need to know is I've never painted before in my whole entire life. It was never a hobby, nothing I pursued at school. But these images started to pour out of me. Once I started, I couldn't put them down. I couldn't put the paints down. And obviously, if you're going through something as major as cancer, I was having therapy at the time. And my therapist suggested, "Viv, why don't you just look at, I don't know, by about, I don't know, after 3 weeks, I must have had like at least 20 or more paintings." And she said, "Viv, just look at them. What's the story they're trying to tell you?" So I spread them all out in my room. And as a coach, I know theoretically about the soul's journey. So if any of you are familiar with the work of James Hollis, James Hillman, other depth psychologists, they all talk about it, and the wisdom traditions do as well. That if we go through real trauma in our lives, so I don't just mean falling over necessarily and hurting yourself. I mean trauma that takes you to the depths of your very being. We have the archetype of the soul's journey, where there is loss, there is the descent, and there is coming out on the other side. And that's what my paintings revealed to me. I was like, oh my God. And they were all rooted in trees and nature, but they revealed to me that I was on the soul's journey. And at the time, I didn't intend to share my paintings with anyone. I didn't see myself as an artist. This was my private recovery. This was for me and no one else. But I was sharing them with a few members of my family, and they're like, "Viv, there's something here. This is special, Viv." And when I returned to work, I shared my paintings with a few of my head teachers in some teamwork that we were doing. And they were like, "Viv, there's something here." And then as I gradually let those voices in, because I was still feeling quite vulnerable, suddenly the words started to come. And looking back, I realized the words were documenting my journey, what I had to do to assist myself to learn to walk through the dark, to actually be in that place of not knowing, of deep vulnerability, when your whole world feels like it's falling apart, and as much as you try, you can't control that. And you don't know, going to get a bit tearful, you don't know what's going to be on the other side, but you have to trust. And that's what happened, really. This book is a documentation of, I suppose, my inner journey, what I had to do to learn to walk in the dark. And it really is some of the key paintings from that time, with a poem that connects to that, and then coaching prompts as well, so that it can become a reflective journal for individuals who are going through their own dark nights of the soul, really just helping them to find, or helping you, I should say, if you're listening to this, to find your way forward. Because essentially, at the end of the day, you know, this journey, these traumas that we go through in life, they are about growth, and they are about enabling us to become more of our true selves. So yeah, that's why I wrote the book. That's the story.
I love the title of your book when you talk about learning to walk in the dark. And first of all, there is this idea of education, of change of mindset, and there is also the idea of walking. So it's just a pace, it's just taking your time to go through the process. And I feel some of the time we don't understand the process we're going through, but you have to understand that process so you could actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. So you couldn't see the light because what happened is that when you're walking, you're making one step at a time. You were not running, you were like, I'm really trying to figure out what is going on in my mind, what is going on in my spirit. I'm just paraphrasing everything you've been saying, and that's how I understood from what you said. And when you were walking, taking it slow, looking around, actually taking the time to see your surrounding, because I feel like sometimes we're so in the fast pace of life that we don't see when you be pause, we don't see things around us. And I feel like as well, there are lots of school leaders who are in that process, even in their journey, where things have been happening in their life. They have experienced a loss, they have experienced trauma, they have experienced um, separation, they have experienced like illness, and there is so many things that is happening to them. And the question that I want you to share with them is through that darkness that they're actually facing, okay, what is the main message that you want to convey to them when they are facing this stuff?
Probably a number of things. One, to be still. It's the hardest thing. And I know from my own experience as a head teacher, one, you have to be still, because it's my belief that when we're taken to what we can call them the leadership crucible moments, let's call them that. So the crucible moments of leadership, where you are taken into the depths of your very being, or you can call them the chrysalis moments, where you're broken down like the caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly. In order to make sense of that, you have to be still, because there is a deeper wisdom that is seeking to rise up through you, because all of these moments are to do with growth and becoming whole. Very much when we're in these moments, these dark places that are brought about by crisis or deep challenge, it's because life is telling us that the old way of being, that can be a thought, it can be a behavior pattern, it can be a relationship, it can be a whole number of things. But my experience tells me personally from what I've been through, but the work that I do with school leaders as well, these dark moments, there's a key task, which is to let go. And we can't often identify what it is that we need to let go until we are still. Because it's then when we are still, we begin to understand more about what this process is about and what is being asked of us. So that's how I would respond to that question.
I love it. I love it. I feel like people may hear what you're saying, but they would be like, but how do you become still? You, how do you get to that level, especially with school, with education, how the system is actually being put together? Like, how can you be still when you are actually an educational leader and there is so much stress around you? How can you do that? So
I
give
think
them some ideas, some keys to get to that place of stillness.
think it has to be deliberate. I think it has to be deliberate and intentional, because if you're not deliberate and intentional, then the demands of the job, as you're saying, Helen, they will keep you busy because you have that norm of being busy, busy, busy. So you have to intentionally create a new norm for yourself. So I know some school leaders who will intentionally put in their diaries meeting, and they are meeting with themselves. No one else knows, but they know that time is blocked out because I am meeting with myself. And there are a number of ways in which school leaders can do that. I know other school leaders who will go out, just for a walk at a certain point in the school day, and it becomes part of their way of being. So for everyone, it will be different. What I would often advise is have the conversation with a coach or someone else who will help you work out the right way to find stillness for yourself. Because again, I think what's important here is what the invitation, the way I put it, is to enable school leaders to be at home in their own company, to be at home with themselves. And that's solitude, which is different from loneliness, which is a separation. What you're inviting in is an acceptance or embracing of solitude. I can be at home in my own company, and that's fine. But it does take a deliberate and intentional practice for that to happen.
I love it. I love it. And this is when you talk about, and I feel that this is what is missing in educational leadership, that stillness. Can you share another trait that is missing? You feel like school leaders are really suffering with at the moment. That stillness is one of them. Share with us two other traits that I feel like they are missing in their journey in order to actually balance um, stress, and as well how they can walk through the darkness. because there's so many things around them. But share other things that you feel like I've been in that field for so many years, and this is the two things I have been struggling with, and I see many leaders struggling with, and we need to really start to reverse the narrative so we can actually give room. And you were talking about wholeness, so share another two struggles that they might be facing as well.
Okay, so I think another one, and forgive me, any school leaders who are listening to this, is self care. I have
Mm.
coached a number of school leaders who have struggled with weight issues or eating issues, or who have struggled in terms of sleep. And actually, what's happened is they have sacrificed their own well-being. And we all know, and it's said so many times, that you can't give from an empty cup. And also, I know, I look back to when I was a young head, I sacrificed my own well being. I look back, I don't think I ate in the most healthiest of ways when I was a head teacher. Exercise went out the window.
Forget about it.
I would use the excuse, oh, I'm rushing up and down all day. That's enough exercise. But no, 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 no. That was stress. That was not exercise. So I think there's something about never, ever sacrifice your own well being. Never. There's a quote by think it's the author Parker Palmer, and he says, self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the gift that I have been given, the gift in terms of touching lives, and therefore it's a gift to be treasured. I've paraphrased it very badly, but basically he's saying it's not a selfish act. If we, particularly school leaders, are there to serve others, then we have to realize how precious, or you have to realize how precious you are. Nurture
Yes,
the gift that you are in other people's lives. So
definitely.
self-care is key. So that's the first one. And then another one I think is connection.
Wow.
I don't think the busyness of school leadership. Now, when I say I mean connection on a number of different levels. I think
Mm.
when school leadership can be so transactional and
Mm.
it can be so competitive. You're looking at the school down the road, you're looking at the other head teacher, the
So
ego can
true.
take over.
Mm.
And then what happens is you lose a connection with your, I call it your vocational vitality, or why you first came into the profession. You lose
Mm.
that deep connection with self. And then the connections with others are quite superficial because you're on guard all the time and you
Mm.
can't really be your full self. So there's something about how do you develop deep connection again with your vocational vitality, your purpose, what once drew you into the profession. How do you make sure that the connections around you are nurturing and supportive of the person you are becoming? Because again, school leadership, I believe, is about growth. And when you step into that role, you are being asked to become more in service of the bigger vision that you have for yourself and the community that you are now
Well,
leading. So
you
that's what
are
I would
speaking.
say.
You're speaking my language. You're speaking my language. I just love it. I just love it. You know, especially when you came in our podcast, you talked about the 5 C's of inner leadership. And I want you to really share with some leaders as well how the book that you actually wrote, Learning to Walk in the Dark, can really ignite their inner leadership. Just share two things. That's
Maybe
the
first of all, I'll just, if those who are viewing can see, just say what the
yeah.
5 C's of inner leadership are so people are aware. So I talk about curiosity, the capacity to engage with questions that cause you to look beyond the surface of your life. And I think that's really important as a school leader because the questions that you're very often asked are to do with justifying, data or results and or school improvement. Now that's not looking beyond the surface, is it? And as I've said earlier, you're on a deeper walk than that. And you need to be able to be in constant conversation with the questions that take you deeper. The second of the 5 C's I talk about is commitment. And that's the capacity to commit to the road less traveled and develop new norms and ways of being that serve the greater whole and move beyond competition and individualism. And again, that's my own experience says that can be quite hard because the road less traveled is the road of inner leadership. And inner leadership requires that we look at those parts of ourselves that perhaps we don't quite like, that perhaps we have rejected. But depth psychology will tell us for us to have a greater sense of agency and become fully who we are, we have to look inward and we have to look at those parts of ourselves that we may have rejected and find a way to integrate them. The third one is courage, the capacity to embrace vulnerability and personal and cultural shadows, to develop psychological maturity and wisdom that underpin good leadership, personally and professionally. So by there, really, I'm just talking about courage being the other side of vulnerability. You can't get to courage, Brené Brown says, without walking through vulnerability. And I think, in terms of life's trials, it's that being vulnerable that we have to allow ourselves, because then we find out what true courage looks like for us. The fourth one is compassion, the capacity to treat, well, I've spoken about this already, but the capacity to treat oneself with understanding and self-compassion as old habits are let loose and replaced by new generative ones. And then finally, connection, the capacity to build deeper relationships with self, others, and the planet, which I think is key, particularly when you're in the role of school leadership. It's asking, that role is really asking for you, I think, will you be a good ancestor? When we're no longer here, will the young people look back and say, yeah, so and so and so and so who taught me or was the leader in my school, they were a good ancestor, because this is the person that I am now because of them. So yeah, 5 C's, and just some key things that I would share with school leaders as to why.
With that, do you think that darkness, going through darkness, really reveal a higher part of you that you could have never thought of actually seeing? Do you think that darkness can actually ignite something different in your life? Because I know that the way you actually perceive darkness, you use it as a way to build something different. But now some people might see darkness as a way to really lose control of themselves, a way to just see negativity around themselves. So, do you feel like we can actually use the power of darkness, walking through darkness, as a way to actually build something new and bringing us to a sense of higher destiny?
Yeah, I really, really do, Helen. And the metaphor that I hold on to is that of the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. So if we
Mm.
think about darkness and what darkness has to teach us, and if, as I do believe that nature is our greatest teacher, we are not separate from nature, we are a part of nature. So if we can look at what is happening in the natural world around us, it gives us clues as to when we as humans go through dark times. And I think the journey of the caterpillar to the butterfly is really key of this. You may already know this, Helen, that a caterpillar has what are called imaginal cells. These imaginal cells, they hold the blueprint for it to become a butterfly, but they can only be activated in the darkness, in the
Wow.
chrysalis, when the caterpillar breaks down, when it becomes caterpillar soup. That's when these imaginal cells are activated, and they, spurt into action, and they start to then form the butterfly. It can't happen when it's crawling on the ground. It can't happen in daylight. It can't happen when it's munching on the leaves. It happens when it has to let go of the old way of being. It
Wow.
happens when it has to surrender to the darkness. And then in the darkness, these imaginal cells are activated. And then the butterfly emerges. So, in answer to your question, what I take from that is that we all have these imaginal cells inside of us that are the blueprint for our true self. And every time we go into the darkness and we allow ourselves and we surrender, something alchemical happens that enables us to become more of what life wants of us. So for me, with my cancer journey, there were so many things, but one of them was this skill of painting. Now, I didn't know that resided inside of me. I didn't know it resided in me. I call it now actually as my soul language, the way in which my soul, my deeper wisdom communicates to me, and it gives me great peace and solace. But I didn't know that that was there. I didn't know I had to be broken down. I had
Mm.
to go to those depths for this other part of Viv Grant to merge into the world. And there have been other bits as well from my whole cancer journey, but it was the darkness and the stillness in the dark and surrendering. I'm not ashamed to say, the amount of tears that I cried, the The amount of times when I just really did not know who I was, had no anchors. And I just had to say to life, okay, I surrender. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in control of this. And through the surrendering, which my painting helped, a new Viv Grant has emerged into the world. I would say I'm still emerging. I don't want to say I'm, that process, turning from the human caterpillar into the human butterfly. I think I'm still working out how to fly
Growing
with
at that
wings.
growth, yeah.
But, that's what I would say in answer to your question. We all have these
I love
imagined
it.
selves.
I love it. And I feel like this is very important in terms of helping school leaders to understand the power of darkness, because when you embrace the power of darkness, you are really discovering a different side of you. And this is exactly what happened to you is you actually use the process as a way to discover a new version of this brand. And I feel it's all in the mind. You didn't use, of course, you had days where you cried, as you said. There are days where you were um, disappointed, you were angry, you were going through all these emotions. But now it's how you have dealt with this emotion. I feel this is important that even in school community, this message that you have can even go beyond the classroom. It can, it's not just only focusing on school leaders, it can be as well for educators, it can be
Oh, it's
also
for everyone.
for students, definitely.
This is a
So it can
universal
actually
message.
be an universal message because the power of darkness brings resilience. It can bring faith. Faith is that point where you actually hold on to hope, hold on to something greater. And I commend you for that journey. And you had the right people around you. You said, now how can I use my pain? And this is beautiful. That's where you actually wrote your book. How can you use your pain to make a message and a testimony to people so they can see the new Viv Grant. So now the question I have for you from all the things that we talked about, from your coaching program, what is the new, I would say the new module that you can actually share with school leaders? Because I know you talk about your 5 C's. You talked about you already have some modules, some coaching I would say program that you have. But now, what is the thing that you said? You know what? I feel like I want to talk more about that. No, I have something that is growing and brewing in me that I want to talk about in another coaching program that I might offer to people. So, what is the one thing that would be your last message, and what you can actually?
There are probably two things. One is the concept of the wounded healer. So the wounded healer, again, from archetypal psychology, and if any of you are aware of,
Mm-hmm.
Jungian psychology and the archetypes that exist, there's one of the wounded healer of how we become more potent in the roles that life have given us, particularly when we're in the caring professions. And I see coaching as being part of the caring profession, where the wound that we have, or that we have carried, or we've learned to somehow maybe heal or find the wisdom within, it then gives us greater potency in terms of being out in the world, in the field that we're our chosen field. So for me, there is something around the wounded healer and what that means for school leaders, just leaders in general, really. There's that archetype. What happens when it's activated within us? What is it that we are learning anew about ourselves and our own unique wounding? I think for me, there's also something that I'm exploring in my head around how does the workplace prepare leaders to return when they face major trauma in their lives? Because I know I felt so vulnerable. The world felt different to me. It was like, oh gosh, I'm back in the world, but I don't want to be quite of it. And my sensibilities around the world, they're changing, and I haven't quite got equilibrium yet, but I still need to be in the world. Now, can you imagine what that's like for leaders, where they've gone through major trauma and then they're expected to turn back up in the workplace as the same person, but they're not. Trauma has changed them. So how can we put in place the right structures, coaching systems that enable people to process that? Because really, what my dream, my hope, my desire is that they step back as wiser leaders. It's wisdom that happens in the darkness. And we want them to be able to harness that wisdom. So on their return back into the workplace, they really have grown from the experience that they've been through. So yeah, that's what I would say, the wounded healer And how do we support individuals, leaders returning back to work when they've been through trauma? Yeah.
I just love it. I just love it. This is exactly the right spot for you where you actually share, no, seriously, your wisdom about what you've learned and how you can empower other people, because the podcast is all about igniting, about creating meaningful connections, how about as well about developing leaders. So this is the right platform for you to share your message and to empower other leaders to actually grow into inner leadership and finding themselves. Okay, last message you can say to them: ignite word. What is the ignite word from everything we talked about? One sentence, from talking about your book, from all the discussion that we have. What is the last message you could tell them and say, okay, this is what I want you to remember. Remember that.
Just simple, really. Don't be afraid of the dark. Don't be afraid of the dark.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Viv, for being with us today on the podcast. For those who are listening to us, please, you can join my Wise Educational Leaders community. You can connect with me on Insta, and I see you in the next episode. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure you connect with us on Instagram at The Keys for Success. Check also my Linktree and become an affiliate of the Success Guide for Teens Academy, a program that will empower your school community as a parent, teacher, and high school senior leader. Do not hesitate to reach out, comment, and share. Until then, see you in the next episodes.